She married a stranger in her sister's place, and he turned out to be a passionate billionaire. What she found out later left her in shock. Before we start, leave a comment telling us which city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10 at the end. Enjoy the story. Dad, please, this is the last time I'll ever ask you for anything. Riley's voice trembled, but her eyes stayed firm. I need the money. It's for Mom's hospital. If I don't pay by tomorrow, they'll stop her treatment. Anthony Cooper leaned back in his armchair, still holding the newspaper as if nothing had happened. Riley, you know things are tough for me right now, he said without looking at her. Business isn't going well. Business? She gave a nervous laugh. You bought a brand new car last week. From upstairs, a sweet and annoyingly fake voice interrupted. Anthony, darling, who's shouting down there? Rebecca came down the stairs in her silk robe with a venomous smile. Oh, it's you, Riley. What a pleasant surprise. Believe me, Rebecca, I didn't expect to come back either, Riley replied, crossing her arms. I just need a loan. $40,000. I promise I'll pay back every cent, Rebecca giggled. 40,000? Honey, do you think money grows on trees? On yours, apparently, Riley shot back. Since everything you want, Dad buys for you. Anthony raised his voice, irritated. Riley, that's enough. Silence filled the room. Riley took a deep breath, trying to hold back tears. Dad, I just want to help Mom. Then Rebecca stepped closer, her eyes gleaming with fake sympathy. You know, there might be a way to fix this. Riley looked at her, suspicious. And how much does this favor cost? A wedding. Rebecca smiled, savoring every word. You marry in Scarlett's place. Riley blinked, confused. What are you talking about? Rebecca sank into the couch. Scarlett was going to marry Derek Barker, remember? That rich guy, heir to Barker Industries. Anthony cleared his throat. Rebecca. But the poor guy got arrested for corporate fraud, she went on, ignoring her husband. The scandal ruined his reputation. His family disowned him, and now he's a disgrace. A criminal with no fortune, completely broke. Riley frowned. And what does that have to do with me? The marriage is still valid, Rebecca said, crossing her legs. His family, and he himself, want to go through with it. But of course, we won't sacrifice our dear Scarlett. Scarlett, who had been watching from the staircase, laughed mockingly. No way I'd marry a broke ex-con. Rebecca looked at Riley with a cold smile. But you could. Riley took a step back, outraged. Is this some kind of joke? No. It's a fair deal. Rebecca stood and walked toward her. You marry Derek Barker in your sister's place. In return, your father and I will cover all your mother's medical expenses. Riley was quiet for a few seconds. Her heart was racing. You're blackmailing me. We're giving you a choice, Rebecca said calmly, almost too calmly. And honestly, it's the only one you have. Anthony looked away, ashamed. Riley, your mother's always been a good woman, but I just can't afford this. Rebecca's trying to help. Riley looked at her father, shocked. Help? This isn't help, it's blackmail. Scarlett laughed from the stairs. Oh, come on, Riley, you should be grateful. You get to marry a rich man, well, ex-rich now, and save your dear mom. It's practically a fairy tale. The budget version. Riley turned to her, furious. You're right, too cheap for you, but just right for me, huh? Rebecca gave a fake tired sigh. Think about it. The wedding will be private, no press, no party. He gets out of prison next week. Riley's eyes widened. What? He's in prison now? Just until Friday. Rebecca smiled. That gives you enough time to pick a dress. Riley stepped back, stunned. This is insane. It's your choice, dear, Rebecca added, returning to the sofa. But the hospital will want an answer tomorrow. Silence took over the room. Riley felt like the world was collapsing on her shoulders. She looked at her father, searching for a shred of humanity. Dad, please tell me you're not going to let Mom die. Anthony took a deep breath but said nothing. Rebecca smiled, satisfied. Then it settled. Riley closed her eyes, fighting back tears. She turned to leave, but before she reached the door, Rebecca added in a teasing tone. Oh, and he's quite handsome, if that helps at all. Riley froze. She turned slowly, her eyes filled with determination. Handsome or not, he'll regret having me as a wife. Rebecca raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Is that a yes? Riley held back her tears and replied firmly. Yes, I'll do it. Rebecca's smile grew wider, triumphant. Scarlett made a face of disgust and turned away. Anthony tried to say something, but Riley cut him off. Don't say anything. I already know what kind of father you are. She walked out of the mansion without looking back. Outside, a light rain had started to fall, quiet, gentle, as if the sky felt sorry for her. Riley walked along the wet sidewalk, her heart heavy, repeating the words she had just spoken to herself. I accept. Deep down, she still couldn't believe it. Marrying a stranger? A man behind bars? It all felt like a nightmare. But her mother's face came to mind, pale, tired. She sighed and looked up at the sky. I'm doing this for you, Mom, only for you. As she walked through the rain, Riley, even in the middle of despair, let out a bitter smile. Marrying a criminal to save your mother? Well done, Riley. You just broke the record for questionable decisions. But somewhere deep inside, there was something else. A stubborn, almost rebellious strength, telling her that this was only the beginning. The beginning of something that would change everything. The wedding day came so fast, Riley barely had time to believe it was really happening. That morning, Riley woke up with a heart as heavy as lead. She lay still for a few seconds. Today I'm marrying a man I've never met, she thought. Congratulations, Riley. You've truly outdone yourself this time. Rebecca, on the other hand, had been up and busy since 6 a.m. The wedding is at 11. I want everything handled before lunch, Rebecca said in a rush, flipping through papers. Not out of emotion, but just to get it over with. Scarlett, leaning on the staircase, watched everything with a bitter expression. So it's really happening? She's marrying the man who was supposed to be mine, she said, folding her arms. What a tragedy. Then again, thinking about it, they do match, two losers. Riley, who had just arrived, took a deep breath and replied with a slight smile. Well, at least he'll have a real person at the altar. Scarlett raised her eyebrows, offended. Aren't you ashamed? Nope, I saved all my shame for after the honeymoon, Riley answered, sarcastic. Rebecca sighed, clearly annoyed. Enough with the drama. Riley, the driver will take you to the dress shop. And remember, no extravagance. This wedding is simple and quick. Oh, and you do have money for the dress, right? Because your father and I won't be covering another expense. Riley gave Rebecca a furious look but stayed calm and nodded. Quick, she repeated in her mind. That word seemed to sum up everything that was about to happen. The shop was small, with the smell of new fabric mixed with cheap perfume. Riley tried on 5 dresses before she found one that somehow made her feel beautiful. The fabric was light, with lace on the sleeves and a touch of innocence that clashed with the tragedy she was living. Looking in the mirror, she gave a short laugh. No money, but still some taste. Mom would be proud. The shop clerk smiled, touched. You look lovely. It'll be a wedding to remember. Riley replied with a dry sense of humor. I hope the groom thinks so too, if he doesn't run away before the vows. A few minutes later, Riley arrived at the small church, accompanied only by one of Rebecca's staff members, who looked at her like she was delivering a package. You look beautiful, Miss Cooper, the woman said in a mechanical tone. Oh, sure, nothing like marrying a stranger to bring out a woman's natural glow. The church was nearly empty. 2 hired witnesses and the priest, who looked more bored than moved. Riley glanced around, her stomach turning. Lovely, dream wedding, just missing the unicorns and a bouquet of onions. She walked in slowly. The sound of her heels echoed on the marble floor, and each step felt like another sacrifice. This is for her, she thought, for Mom. But the moment she reached the altar, she noticed something strange. The groom wasn't there. The priest adjusted his glasses. Looks like we're having a small delay. Riley took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Perfect. My groom didn't even bother to show up. But minutes later, the church doors opened. A tall man in a dark suit with blue eyes as cold as winter walked in with confident steps. The kind of man who looked like he stepped out of a high-end cologne commercial. Right behind him, an assistant carried a folder. The murmurs stopped. Rebecca straightened up in the pew. Scarlett held her breath, and Riley just froze, swallowing hard. It was him. Derek Barker. Far too handsome for this whole situation, the kind of man who didn't seem to fit in any part of what she had imagined. Strong features, cold gaze, commanding presence. Oh my, Riley whispered. Nobody told me the criminal looked like a model. He walked up to the altar without looking around, emotionless. He stopped in front of her, adjusted his tie, and said in a steady voice, Let's just get this over with. Riley blinked, surprised. Wow, how romantic. Derek looked away. I'm not here to impress anyone. Great, she replied, keeping her tone light. I'm not a fan of fairy tales either. The priest cleared his throat, trying to keep things solemn. Shall we begin? During the vows, Riley tried to stay composed. Her hands trembled slightly. At times, Derek's eyes met hers, and for a moment there was something different there. Something quiet. When the priest asked if he accepted Riley Cooper as his wife, Derek answered without hesitation, "I do." His voice was firm, almost commanding. "And you, Miss Cooper?" the priest asked. Riley gave a small smile and whispered, barely audible, "At least the groom is handsome." Derek heard it, and for a second, a small smile crossed his face. It was quick, but real, the first glimpse of humanity in that mysterious man. "I do," Riley added, looking straight at him. The priest declared them husband and wife. A quiet round of applause echoed in the church. Rebecca stood, satisfied, and whispered to Scarlett, "Everything went as planned." Scarlett rolled her eyes. "I still think this is insane." While the priest signed the papers, Derek stayed silent. His gaze, distant, seemed fixed on something far beyond the moment. When Riley picked up the pen to sign, he quietly said, "You look nervous." She shot back, "And you look like a man who's done this before." He raised an eyebrow. "Maybe." Riley gave a half smile. "Great. Then you must already know where the emergency exit is." As soon as they stepped out of the church, the rain picked up. Derek opened the umbrella and held one side out to her. "Come on." "I'd rather get wet," Riley replied. "As you wish." The two walked side by side in silence. A black car was waiting. Inside, Tyler, Derek's assistant, watched with curiosity. "Congratulations, boss. Quick wedding, no drama." "It's too soon to say that," Derek replied, glancing subtly at Riley. She stared right back, challenging. "Are you analyzing me, Mr. Barker?" He gave a faint smile. "Just trying to understand what would make someone agree to marry a man who just got out of prison." "I could ask the same thing," she replied. "What would make a man like you agree to marry a stranger?" Derek turned his gaze to the window. "Motives? We all have them." Riley let out a bitter laugh. "Then I guess we're even." The silence that followed was tense, but filled with a strange energy. Even if they wouldn't admit it, both were intrigued by each other. When the car stopped at the house Derek had chosen for them to live in, Riley got ready to get out. But before she could open the door, Derek said, "From now on, we'll be a couple, at least in the eyes of the world." She frowned. "And in our own eyes?" "Two strangers sharing the same fate," he replied seriously. "That's all." Riley stayed still for a moment, absorbing those words, but deep down she was relieved not to truly be the wife of a complete stranger. Then, she let out a short laugh. "How romantic." Derek watched her step out of the car into the rain and murmured to himself, "You're different, Riley Cooper, and that might be a problem." From the front seat, Tyler glanced sideways. "Sir, should I go ahead with the plan?" Derek kept his eyes on Riley outside. "Yes. Everything is agreed." Tyler nodded. "Then the game starts now." "Good luck, sir." Derek opened the car door and murmured, just loud enough for Tyler to hear, "She has no idea who I really am." On the other side, Riley adjusted her dress and looked at the house Derek had brought her to, unaware that at that very moment, the man she had just called her husband was hiding a secret that would change her life completely. Riley stood looking at the building in front of her. A one-story house, painted in faded beige, with plain windows and a small, neglected garden. Nothing fancy. Nothing impressive. She blinked a few times, taking in the scene. Derek walked past her carrying a suitcase and opened the front door without a word. Riley stepped in slowly, taking in every detail. The living room was small, with an old brown fabric couch, a scratched coffee table, and an outdated TV on a dark wooden stand. The walls needed painting and the wooden floor creaked with each step. She sighed and tried to sound cheerful. "Well, at least the couch isn't broken." Derek dropped the suitcase in the corner and turned to her with a half smile. "Too fancy for a broke ex-con, don't you think?" Riley couldn't help it. She let out a short laugh. He chuckled too, quietly, like someone who wasn't used to laughing. It felt strange. For a moment they seemed like two ordinary people sharing a silly joke, but the silence that followed brought reality rushing back. Derek adjusted his tie and walked into the kitchen. Riley followed, curious. "So, this is our house now?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "For now, yes." He opened the empty fridge and quickly shut it again. "I'll need to buy groceries tomorrow." Riley leaned against the counter and crossed her arms. "All right, but let's make a few things clear from the start." Derek looked at her, curious. "Clear how?" "Rules." Riley raised a finger. "Rule number 1, I know you already said it, but I want to make it crystal clear. In public, we act like a couple. Smiles, politeness, the whole show." Derek nodded. "Agreed." "Rule number 2, she went on, raising another finger. At home, we're just roommates. Nothing more. Got it? Got it? Derek crossed his arms, copying her stance. And rule number 3? Riley paused for a second, then said, You don't snore loudly, do you? Derek raised an eyebrow, surprised, then let out a quiet laugh. No idea. No one ever complained. Riley shrugged. Good, because if you do, I'll throw water on you. He shook his head, amused. I'll do my best to stay quiet then. Riley smiled back. There was something about him, something beneath all that coldness, that intrigued her. Maybe it was the way he reacted to her teasing, or maybe it was just the fact that, no matter how strange the situation was, he didn't seem like a bad person. It was still too soon to be sure, but at least he had a sense of humor. Night came quickly. After a simple meal of sandwiches and orange juice, Riley walked to the only bedroom and stopped at the door. So who gets the bed? Derek showed up behind her, looking into the small room with a single bed pushed against the wall. You take it, I'll sleep on the couch. Riley turned, surprised. Really? Really? He grabbed a pillow and a blanket from the closet. I'm not as bad as I seem. She wanted to say something, but just nodded. Thanks. Derek left the room without another word. Riley gently closed the door and looked around. The room was simple but clean. There was an old dresser, a window with a thin curtain, and a bed that creaked with every movement. She sat on the edge and sighed. What am I doing with my life? But at the same time, part of her felt oddly relieved. At least Derek wasn't aggressive. At least he had kept his word about sleeping separately. Small victories. In the living room, Derek was trying to get comfortable on the couch. He fixed the pillow, stretched his legs, and crack. The loud, unmistakable sound of one of the couch legs giving out, nearly sending him to the floor. Just great. From the bedroom door, Riley appeared with an amused expression. Is the whole couch done for? Derek sighed, trying not to laugh. Riley walked over to take a look. The couch was crooked, with one leg dangling to the side. Need help? Unless you've got superglue hidden somewhere. Riley rolled her eyes and went to the kitchen. She came back with heavy-duty tape and a piece of wood she found in the cupboard. Improvising is my specialty. Derek watched as she fixed the leg, wrapping the tape with surprising skill. It was funny to see her so focused, completely in the zone. There. All done. Riley stood up, proud. It won't last long, but at least you won't be sleeping on the floor. Derek tested the couch, sitting down slowly. It held. Impressive. I know. She gave a big smile. I'm practically an engineer. He let out a real laugh this time, and Riley felt something stir in her chest. It was nice to see him laugh. She headed back to the bedroom, but before closing the door, she looked back. Good night, Derek. Good night, Riley. The next morning, Derek woke up early. The couch had made it through the night, up to his surprise. He got up, folded the blanket, and grabbed his phone. He dialed Tyler. I need you to do something for me. On the other end, Tyler sounded sleepy. Good morning to you too, boss. Find out everything you can about Riley Cooper. Derek walked to the window and looked outside. I want to know who this woman really is. Family, background, debts, relationships, everything. Tyler hesitated. Sir, don't you think you should tell her the truth? Derek's face grew serious. Not yet, but she'll find out eventually, and when she does. I know, Derek cut in firmly, but until then I need to be sure about who she really is. Tyler sighed. All right. I'll start today. Derek hung up and stayed there, staring out the window. Part of him knew Tyler was right, but the other part, the part that had been fooled before, just couldn't trust so easily. Meanwhile, Riley walked out of the bedroom already dressed, wearing jeans and a plain blouse. I'm going to return the dress, she announced, picking up the bag where she had stored the wedding gown. Derek turned around, surprised. Return it? Yes, it was rented, he frowned. Why didn't you just buy one, since your father has money? Riley shrugged, like it was obvious. It would have been a waste to spend money on something I never wanted. Derek stayed quiet, processing her answer. There was something about her honesty that disarmed him. It wasn't self-pity or dramatics. It was just honesty. He nodded slowly. Makes sense. Riley gave a faint smile and walked out the door. Derek stood there, thinking. She was different, very different from any woman he had ever met. Later that day, Tyler called back. Sir, I finished the initial investigation. And, Tyler paused, she's not who you think she is. Derek felt a tightness in his chest. Explain. Her mother's sick. She's been hospitalized for months. Riley's been working 3 different jobs to cover the bills. No luxury debts, no unnecessary spending. She's clean. Derek closed his eyes. You're sure? Absolutely. He hung up and walked to the window. Outside, Riley was coming back with the empty bag, walking slowly, like the weight of the world was on her shoulders. Derek watched her every move. The awkward way she walked, the tired smile, the strength hidden behind a gentle demeanor. He murmured softly, almost to himself, "We'll see." But deep down, part of him already knew the truth. Riley Cooper wasn't a threat. She was just a woman trying to survive, and that scared him more than any lie ever could. 3 days after the wedding, Riley woke up with a heavy feeling in her chest. Today was the day to collect the promised money. She got ready in silence, putting on a plain white blouse and black pants. Derek had already left early, saying he had something important to take care of. Riley didn't even ask what. They were still in that strange stage of being polite strangers. She took the bus to the upscale neighborhood where her father's mansion was. With every block that passed, her anxiety grew. When she rang the bell, it was Rebecca who answered. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that chilled the air. "Riley, what a surprise! Come in." Riley stepped in slowly, taking everything in. The living room was still spotless, full of expensive furniture and oversized paintings. Anthony was sitting in the armchair, flipping through the newspaper as if nothing had happened. "Hi, Dad." He looked up quickly, but then looked away. "Riley, what brings you here?" She took a deep breath. "The money. You promised to pay for Mom's treatment." The silence was uncomfortable. Anthony adjusted his glasses, looking uneasy. "Riley, about that. The situation has changed." She felt the floor fall out from under her. "Changed how?" Rebecca stepped closer, crossing her arms. "The investment didn't go well, dear. We lost a significant amount." Riley's eyes widened. "Investment? What investment?" Anthony sighed, annoyed. "Business, Riley, you wouldn't understand." "Wouldn't understand?" Her voice rose. "You used my life as a bargaining chip." Rebecca rolled her eyes. "Be reasonable. We tried to help, but things didn't turn out the way we hoped." Riley felt the anger rise in her throat. "Reasonable? I married a man I had never met because you promised to save my mom." From upstairs, Scarlett came down the stairs with a bored expression. "Wow, still whining? I thought you'd be over it by now." Riley turned to her, furious. "Over it? Do you have any idea what it's like to wake up every day not knowing if your mother's still alive?" Scarlett shrugged. "Not my problem." "Of course it's not." Riley stepped closer. "Because you've never had to fight for anything in your life." Anthony stood up, trying to calm things down. "That's enough. Both of you." Riley looked straight at him, her eyes filled with held-back tears. "I did everything you asked, everything, and now you just back out?" Rebecca sighed, like she was tired of the whole thing. "That's life, dear. Sometimes things don't go as planned." Riley shook her head in disbelief. There was nothing more to say. She left the mansion without looking back, heartbroken. On the bus ride home, the tears finally fell. Quiet, heavy tears. How was she going to pay for the hospital now? How was she going to save her mother? When she got home, Derek was in the living room, looking at his phone. "You're back," he said without looking up. Riley tried to cover it up, quickly wiping her face. "Yeah, I'm back." He looked at her then and noticed something was off. Something wasn't right. "Did something happen?" Riley forced a smile. "No, I just lost a bad joke contest. I'm crushed." Derek raised an eyebrow but didn't push. She went upstairs before he could ask anything else. The next morning, Riley woke up to the sound of a door slamming. She went downstairs and found Derek standing in the living room, holding a bag. "Good morning," he said, handing her the bag. Riley frowned. "What's this?" "It's for you." She opened it slowly and her eyes widened. Inside was a brown leather purse, simple but clearly expensive. "Derek, I can't accept this." "Yes, you can." He crossed his arms. "Consider it a wedding gift." Riley looked at the purse, then back at him. "But you're poor. How did you afford this?" Derek let out a short laugh. "I saved up, Miss Grumpy." She couldn't help but smile. "Thank you. Really, He nodded and walked out the door, leaving Riley alone, holding the purse like it was the most precious treasure in the world. But the peace didn't last. That night, the phone rang. Riley picked it up, her heart pounding. "Hello? Miss Cooper? This is Cedar Springs Hospital. We're calling to let you know that if payment isn't made by tomorrow, we'll have to stop Mrs. Grace Cooper's treatment." Riley felt the air leave her lungs. "No, please, just a few more days." "I'm sorry, but those are the rules." The call ended. Riley stood there, staring at the phone, completely overwhelmed by panic. She looked around. She needed money. Fast. Her eyes landed on the purse Derek had given her. Her chest tightened, but she had no choice. The next day, she went to a second-hand luxury store and sold the purse. The money wasn't enough to cover everything, but it would help. She also sold a few old belongings, a watch her mother had given her, a graduation ring. Tyler, who happened to be walking down the same street, saw her coming out of the store. He frowned, curious, but didn't approach. He just watched. When Riley got home, she was exhausted. She put the money in an envelope and took a deep breath. At least she had managed to buy a few more days. But just minutes later, the door burst open. Derek stormed in, furious, holding a piece of paper. A receipt. "Why did you sell my gift?" Riley froze. "Answer me." He slammed the receipt on the table. "Why did you sell it?" She tried to explain, but he cut her off. "I thought you were different, Riley. I thought you weren't like them." The words hit hard. "Like who?" "Like your family." Derek stepped closer. "Always after money, always calculating, always selfish." Riley felt tears sting her eyes. "You don't understand anything. Then explain it to me," he shouted, losing control. Riley exploded. "My mother is dying. She's dying, Derek, and I don't have the money to save her." The silence dropped like a weight. Derek stopped, breathing heavily. Riley kept going, her voice breaking. "They used me. They blackmailed me. They said they'd pay for her treatment if I married you. And now they backed out. I have no one. I have nothing." She collapsed onto the couch, crying. "I sold the purse because it was the only valuable thing I had, because my mother is worth more than any gift." Derek stood still, letting her words sink in. His anger melted into guilt, into shame. He slowly walked toward her and knelt in front of her. "Riley." She pushed him away. "Go away. You don't understand anything. And I thought you were human." Derek grabbed her arms gently, stopping her from pulling back. "I'm sorry. Please." Riley tried to break free, but he didn't let go. Their eyes met, and something shifted. Their breathing grew faster. The tension in the air was almost too much. Derek pulled her closer and kissed her. She hesitated for a moment, then gave in. The kiss was desperate, full of emotion, pain, and everything they hadn't said. When they pulled away, they were both out of breath. "I'm sorry," Derek whispered, resting his forehead on hers. "I didn't know. I'll help you, with the hospital, with everything." Riley shook her head, tears still falling. "You don't have to." "I want to." And then, without another word, he held her tighter, like he wanted to shield her from the world. That night, through tears and silence, they gave themselves to each other. It wasn't planned. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. For the first time since they met, Derek and Riley weren't just two strangers in an agreement. They were two broken people, trying to find each other in the middle of the chaos. That morning, Riley opened her eyes slowly. The morning light came through the window, soft and golden. She blinked a few times, trying to remember where she was. The room, the bed, the night before. She turned quickly to the side, but the space beside her was empty. The blanket tossed aside. Derek was gone. Her heart sank. Of course, he regretted it and ran off. Riley sat up in bed, rubbing her face. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Part of her had hoped he'd still be there. Another part was already bracing for the moment he'd walk away. But then she heard the front door open. She quickly got up, threw on the first clothes she could find, and rushed downstairs, her heart pounding. Derek was standing in the living room, holding something in his hands. When he saw her, he lifted what looked like a small, makeshift bouquet. "Good morning." Riley stopped on the last step, confused. "You went out?" He shrugged, a little embarrassed. "Picked a flower from the lot next door." She looked at the bouquet. Wildflowers, a little crooked, with a few leaves still covered in dirt. Nothing fancy, nothing perfect. But it was genuine. Riley couldn't help it. She laughed. "You trespassed on the neighbor's property?" Derek gave a small smile. "Technically, the lot's abandoned, so I'm not sure it counts as trespassing." Still laughing, she took the flowers and went to the kitchen to find something to put them in. She found an old glass and filled it with water. "There, now we have some decoration." Derek leaned against the counter, watching her with a different look. Softer, almost caring. "You okay?" Riley looked at him, surprised by the question. "I'm fine. You?" He nodded slowly. "Me too." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was strange, but in a good way. Like something had shifted between them, and neither of them knew quite what to do with it. Riley broke the silence first. "Thank you, for the flowers." Derek gave a half smile. "You're welcome." Later that day, Derek was in the backyard, talking on the phone. Tyler, on the other end, sounded concerned. Boss, are you sure about this? Derek looked through the window, watching Riley arranging things in the kitchen. What do you mean? She's a good one, boss. Honest, I've looked into everything. There's no reason to doubt her. Derek stayed quiet for a moment. Or she's just a really good actress. Tyler sighed. Sir, with all due respect, I don't think the problem is her. It's you. Derek frowned. Watch what you say, Tyler. I'm being serious. You're afraid to trust, and that's going to ruin any chance you two might have. Derek hung up without replying, but the words kept echoing in his mind. Was Tyler right? He shook his head, trying to push the thoughts away, and walked back inside the house. The next morning, Riley woke up feeling cheerful. She decided to make breakfast. After all, Derek had brought her flowers. The least she could do was try to be a good, what? Wife? Housemate? She still wasn't sure. She went to the kitchen, grabbed the coffee grounds, the old coffee maker, and got to work. But distracted, she used too much coffee, not enough water, and forgot to turn off the heat. Minutes later, a strange smell started to spread through the house. Derek walked into the kitchen, already dressed, and stopped at the door when he saw the scene. Riley stood by the stove, waving smoke away with a dish towel while the coffee maker hissed dangerously. What happened here? She turned, her face red with embarrassment. I tried to make coffee. Derek walked over, turned off the heat, and looked at the mess. Tried? Or committed a domestic offense? Riley let out a nervous laugh. At least I didn't poison you. He shook his head, trying not to smile. The day's still young. She playfully smacked his arm. Hey, I'm trying to be nice here. Derek grabbed the ruined coffee pot and poured it out. Being nice is one thing. Burning down the house is another. She crossed her arms, pretending to be offended. So, Mr. Perfect is going to teach me? Derek raised an eyebrow. I can try, as long as you promise not to blow anything up. Riley laughed, and the mood between them lightened again. It was funny how, even in the middle of chaos, they could still find moments like this. Moments that almost felt normal. After the improvised breakfast, which Derek made without burning anything, Riley stayed in the living room, flipping through an old book she found on the shelf. Derek was in the bedroom getting ready when he heard his phone ring. It was Tyler. Any updates? Nothing, boss. She's still clean. No scandals, no shady debts, just a woman trying to get by. Derek hung up and stood still for a moment, thinking, maybe it was time to stop doubting. Maybe it was time to start trusting. But the fear was still there, small but present. That night, Riley went to bed early. She was worn out by everything, the emotions, the worries, life itself. Derek stayed up, sitting in the living room, deep in thought. But after a while, he quietly walked to the bedroom just to check on her. Riley was sound asleep, her face relaxed, hair spread across the pillow. He stood still, watching her. Then she mumbled something. Derek? He froze. Was she awake? But no, she stayed still, eyes closed, breathing softly. Derek, don't go. The words came out quietly, barely a whisper, but he heard them, and he felt something tighten in his chest. Something strong, impossible to ignore. He walked over slowly, adjusted the blanket over her, and stayed there for a few more seconds, just watching. When he returned to the living room, he sat on the couch and ran his hands over his face. I'm falling in love. The words came out softly, almost like a whisper. As if saying it out loud made it more real, more dangerous, because falling in love meant opening up. It meant taking a risk, and Derek Barker wasn't used to risking his heart. But as he looked toward the room where Riley was sleeping, he realized it might already be too late to pull back. He had already taken the risk without even noticing, and now he just had to find out if that risk was worth it. Derek leaned his head against the back of the couch and closed his eyes. This is dangerous. But for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like running. He felt like staying. And somehow, in a strange and frightening way, that felt right. The next morning, Riley woke up and found Derek in the kitchen, already making coffee. She stopped in the doorway and watched him for a moment. There was something different about him, something lighter. Good morning, she said with a smile. Derek turned and smiled back. Good morning. Smoke-free coffee today. Riley laughed. You're never going to let me forget that, are you? Never. She sat down at the table and Derek poured 2 cups. They drank together in silence, but it was a comfortable silence. And in that moment, Riley realized something. Maybe this arranged marriage, this chaotic beginning, wasn't the end of the story. Maybe it was just the beginning. Riley looked out the kitchen window, watching the street outside. She needed to do something. She couldn't just sit around, depending on Derek's income. She had to contribute. That's when she had an idea. "Derek," she called, excited. He stepped into the room, adjusting his shirt. "What is it?" "I'm going to sell cake jars." Derek blinked, confused. "Cake, what?" Riley laughed. "Cake jars. Little cakes in glass jars. They're easy to make and people love them." He folded his arms, thinking, "You know how to make cakes?" "Of course." Riley pretended to be offended. "Just because I burned the coffee doesn't mean I'm a total disaster in the kitchen." Derek raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "If you say so." Riley gave his arm a playful slap. "Trust me, it's going to work." And surprisingly, Derek did. Over the next few days, Riley started preparing the cakes. She bought basic ingredients, cheap glass jars, and put extra care into the recipes. Chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, all made with love. Derek helped when he could, washing dishes, organizing jars. But most of the work was hers, and he admired the determination she had. "I'm going to sell downtown," she announced, excited. "There's a lot of foot traffic there." Derek nodded. "Good luck." Riley headed out, carrying a box full of cakes, smiling like she was about to conquer the world. And in a way, she was. Meanwhile, Derek picked up his phone and called Tyler. "I need you to come pick me up." "Back to the company, sir?" "Yes." A few minutes later, a black car pulled up in front of the house. Derek got in, adjusted the suit he'd left in the back seat, and took a deep breath. Tyler looked at him through the rearview mirror. "You sure about this, boss?" Derek didn't answer. Barker Industries was a towering glass and steel building, impressive in the heart of Seattle. Derek entered through the side entrance, avoiding attention. He went straight to the top floor. The office was luxurious. Mahogany desk, huge windows overlooking the city, expensive paintings on the walls, all things Riley had no idea about. Tyler walked in behind him and closed the door. "This is going to blow up, sir." Derek sat in the chair, looking over the papers on the desk. "I know what I'm doing." "With all due respect, no you don't." Tyler crossed his arms. "She's going to find out, and when she does, she'll feel like you lied." Derek slammed his hand on the desk, frustrated. "I'd rather have her love me without knowing who I really am." Tyler shook his head. "Love doesn't work like that, sir." Derek looked away. He knew Tyler was right, but fear was stronger than reason. While Derek was facing his demons at the office, Riley was downtown, selling cake jars with a smile on her face. "Hi there. Want to try one?" she offered to everyone passing by. Some people stopped, others ignored her. But Riley didn't give up. Her good mood was contagious, and soon she started winning over customers. "This chocolate one is delicious," said an elderly woman. "Thank you. It's my grandmother's recipe." Riley lied without blinking, but with so much charm that no one doubted it. A man in a suit stopped and bought 3 jars. "My wife's going to love these." Riley smiled brightly. "I'm sure she will." By the end of the day, she had sold almost all the cakes. She came home tired, but happy. Derek was already there, sitting on the couch, reading something on his phone. When he saw her come in, he quickly put the phone away. "How did it go?" Riley lifted the empty box, triumphant. "I sold almost everything." Derek smiled, genuinely proud. "I knew you could do it." She dropped onto the couch next to him, exhausted. "And you? How was work?" Derek hesitated for a second. "Normal. Carrying boxes all day is tiring." Riley laughed. "I bet. My boss is terrible, but at least he pays in smiles." Derek pretended to laugh, but felt a tightness in his chest. Every lie weighed heavier. That night, they had dinner together. Simple pasta with tomato sauce. Nothing fancy, but made with care. "You know," Riley said, twirling the pasta on her fork, "I never thought I'd enjoy baking so much." Derek watched her. "Why not?" "Because." She shrugged. "I always thought my life would be different, that I'd have a fancy job, a nice apartment, but in the end, I think I'm happy like this." Derek stayed quiet. Her words hit him in an unexpected way. She didn't need luxury, she didn't need money, she just needed something real. A few days later, Tyler walked into the office with a thick folder. "Sir, I finished the full investigation on Riley Cooper." Derek took the folder, opening it slowly. "So?" Tyler took a deep breath. "Her story is tough, sir." Derek flipped through the papers. There were documents, old photos, school records. Tyler started explaining. She grew up with her mom, Grace, after her dad left them. Anthony Cooper walked out when Riley was just 7. He started a new life with Rebecca and had Scarlett. Derek felt a pang in his chest. "Go on." "Riley started working as a teenager. Odd jobs, selling things on the street, whatever she could to help her mom. When Grace got sick, Riley dropped out of college to take care of her full time. Derek closed his eyes. And her father never helped? Never. Tyler shook his head. Not a cent until the wedding. Derek felt a wave of anger, but it was quickly replaced by guilt. He had judged Riley. He had doubted her. And now, reading her whole story, he realized how wrong he'd been. She never wanted my money. Derek muttered to himself. No, sir, Tyler confirmed. She just wanted love. Derek dropped the folder on the desk and rubbed his face. I'm such an idiot. Tyler didn't disagree. Derek stayed silent for a long moment. Part of him wanted to run home and tell her everything. But fear held him back. I'm keeping the secret, he finally said. Tyler frowned. Sir, it's better this way. Better for who? Tyler crossed his arms. For her or for you? Derek glared at him, annoyed. Watch it, Tyler. But Tyler didn't back down. With all due respect, sir, love doesn't need masks. The words hung in the air. Derek felt their weight but didn't respond. After Tyler left, Derek stood alone in the office. He walked to the private bathroom and looked in the mirror. The man staring back was Derek Barker, CEO, billionaire, but also a coward. He leaned on the sink and let out a deep sigh. Love doesn't need masks, he repeated quietly. But then his own voice echoed back, cold and realistic, but fear does. He left the bathroom, grabbed his jacket, and went home. When he arrived, Riley was in the kitchen making more cakes for the next day. Hey, she smiled when she saw him. You're home early today. Derek forced a smile. Yeah, finish sooner. Riley wiped her hands on her apron and walked over. Are you okay? You look tired. He pulled her into a hug without saying a word. Riley was surprised but hugged him back. Hey, what's going on? Nothing. Derek rested his face on her shoulder. Just, thank you. Riley frowned, confused. For what? For being you. She laughed, not really understanding, but tightened the hug. And Derek, holding the woman he was slowly learning to love, realized he was trapped. Trapped between truth and lies, between fear and love. And for now, fear was still winning. The following weeks were the best Riley had had in a long time. Her jar cakes were a hit. She had loyal customers now, people who waited for her in the same spot at the same time. Some even placed orders in advance. Riley, called the lady from the bakery on the corner. Did you bring the strawberry ones today? Riley smiled, handing her 3 jars. Of course, Mrs. Linda. I set these aside just for you. The woman paid and even gave her a tip. You're such a sweetheart, dear. Riley went home that afternoon with a full heart and a slightly fuller wallet. It wasn't much, but it was honest. It was hers. Derek was in the living room when she got back, trying to put together a shelf he had bought. Need help? Riley asked, dropping her bag. No, I'm almost done. She watched for a few seconds, then burst out laughing. Derek, that's upside down. He stopped, looked at the shelf and sighed. It is not. It is. Riley stepped closer and took the manual from his hands. Look here, side A goes into side B, not C. Derek crossed his arms, pretending to be offended. Frank, since when are you a furniture expert? Since I found out you're terrible at it. She winked and started taking apart the wrong piece. Derek stood there watching her work. She was good at everything. Funny, determined, smart, and he was completely in love with her. All done, Riley announced proudly. Now it's right. Derek tested the shelf. Solid. Thanks. You're welcome. She wiped her hands. But you owe me dinner. He smiled. Deal. That night, Derek made a simple dinner. Grilled chicken and vegetables. Nothing fancy, but well prepared. Riley ate with enthusiasm, complimenting every bite. Seriously, you cook better than I do. Not hard to beat, Derek joked. She threw a napkin at him. Careful, Mr. Perfect. I could still poison you. Derek laughed, and Riley felt her chest warm. She liked these moments. She liked how they were slowly getting to know each other, building something real. Or at least that's what she thought. A few days later, Riley got a special request. A company wanted to order 50 jar cakes for a corporate event. 50? Riley's eyes widened over the phone. Are you sure? Yes, it needs to be delivered tomorrow by 3 in the afternoon at the Barker Building, downtown. Riley wrote down the address, excited. It was the biggest order she'd ever gotten. She spent the whole night preparing the cakes. Derek tried to help, but she kicked him out of the kitchen. You'll just get in the way. Out. He raised his hands in surrender. All right, boss. The next morning, Riley woke up early, packed everything into insulated boxes, and took a taxi to the address. The Barker Building was impressive. Glass and steel, modern, intimidating. Riley looked up, amazed. Wow. Working here must be something. She walked into the lobby carrying the boxes. The receptionist directed her to the 15th floor. That's where they're setting up the event. Riley thanked her and stepped into the elevator. When she reached the floor, she found herself in a wide hallway with huge windows and minimalistic decor. She walked slowly, looking for someone to deliver the cakes to. Then she heard voices coming from a meeting room. "Mr. Derek, we need your approval on these contracts." Riley froze. "Mr. Derek?" She slowly turned and looked through the slightly open glass door. Inside was a group of executives, expensive suits, leather folders, serious expressions, and in the center of it all, Derek. He wore a flawless suit, stood tall, his expression focused. He spoke with authority, gesturing as he explained something about investments and strategies. Riley felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. The boxes slipped from her hands and crashed to the floor. A few executives turned toward the hallway, but Derek had his back to her, focused on a presentation on the screen. Riley didn't wait. She turned and ran. She ran to the elevator, hit the button over and over, stepped in, and slid down against the wall. The tears started falling before she could even process what she had just seen. Derek? Her Derek. Right there. Running the whole thing. He had lied. When she got home, Riley locked herself in the bedroom. She grabbed her phone with trembling hands and typed his name into the search bar. Derek Barker. The first article that popped up was from 6 months ago. CEO of Barker Industries arrested for alleged corporate fraud. Riley read every word, heart-pounding. There were photos of him being escorted by police, dramatic headlines, speculations. She kept scrolling. Another article, more recent. Derek Barker found innocent but disinherited by family. Fortune lost. Riley frowned. Disinherited? Fortune lost? That didn't make sense. He was there, in that building, clearly in charge. She kept digging, clicking through every article, until she found a very recent one, from just 2 weeks ago. Sources reveal Derek Barker has regained control of Barker Industries, fortune restored. Riley let the phone drop onto her lap. He was never poor. Everything had been a lie. The modest house, the moving job, the struggles, all of it. A lie. She stood up, furious, and began searching. She needed to understand. She needed to know why he had done this. She went to the bedroom and started digging through things. Drawers, closets, the desk. That's when she found a folder hidden in the back of a drawer. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside were documents, lots of them, and her name was on every single page. Riley Cooper. Financial history, school records, old photos, detailed reports about her life. She flipped through each page, her stomach turning. He had investigated her. From the very beginning. Everything he knew about her, everything that seemed like intuition, was actually purchased information. Tears fell again, but this time they weren't from sadness. They were from anger. She slammed the folder shut and threw it onto the bed. "You played with my heart." The words came out quietly, but full of pain. Riley ran her hands over her face, trying to calm down, but the anger was stronger. She had believed him, had given herself to him, had loved him, and it had all been based on lies. She heard the front door open. "Riley?" Derek's voice echoed through the house. "Are you here?" She didn't answer. Derek walked up the stairs and stopped at the bedroom door. He saw Riley standing there, holding the folder. His face turned pale. "Riley?" She held up the folder, showing the documents. "What is this, Derek?" He swallowed hard. "I can explain." "Explain?" Her voice rose. "You investigated me. You lied about who you are, about everything." Derek stepped forward. "I had reasons." "Reasons?" Riley threw the folder on the floor. "What kind of reason justifies this?" Derek closed his eyes, trying to find the right words. "It's complicated, Riley." Riley let out a bitter laugh. "You played me, made me believe we were the same, that we were fighting side by side." Derek reached out, but she pulled away. "Don't touch me." "Riley, please." She shook her head, tears streaming down. "I trusted you." Derek felt his chest tighten. "And you still can." Riley looked him in the eye, her eyes red. "How? How can I trust someone who lied about everything?" He had no answer. Riley grabbed her purse and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" Derek asked, panicked. "Anywhere far from you." And before he could say anything else, Riley walked out, slamming the door behind her. Derek stood in the middle of the room, staring at the folder on the floor. He had lost. Lost the one person who truly mattered. And this time, there wasn't enough money in the world to fix it. Riley stormed out of the house, but didn't go far. She stopped on the sidewalk, taking deep breaths, trying to calm her racing heart. Where could she go? She didn't have anywhere to go at that moment. No money for a hotel. And going back to her mother's apartment now, in this state, would only worry her. So she did the only thing she could. She sat down on the curb and waited. Waited for the anger to pass. Waited for the tears to dry. Waited until she could think clearly. Inside the house, Derek came down the stairs like a robot. He picked up his phone and called Tyler. "I need you here. Now." Minutes later, Tyler arrived. He found Derek sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. "What happened?" "She found out everything." Tyler closed his eyes, sighing. "I warned you, sir." Derek lifted his head, angry. "I don't need a lecture right now, Tyler." "Then what do you need?" Derek didn't answer. He just stared out the window, blankly. Outside, Riley watched the house. She saw Tyler go in, saw the lights come on in the living room, and then she heard voices. She stepped closer, leaning against the wall next to the slightly open window. "Sir, you already have proof she's not after your money," Tyler said seriously. "You investigated everything. You know she's honest. Why didn't you tell her the truth from the start?" Derek ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. "It wasn't the right time. And when would it be?" Tyler crossed his arms. "When she found out on her own, like she just did? I was scared," Derek snapped. "Scared of losing her." Riley's chest tightened. He was scared of losing her? Then why had he lied? Tyler shook his head. "And now? You lost her anyway." Derek stayed quiet. He knew Tyler was right. Riley backed away from the window, heartbroken. She understood everything in that moment. It had all been calculated. Every gesture, every word, every moment she thought was real, was part of a test. She took a deep breath and walked through the front door. Derek and Tyler turned, surprised. "Riley," she raised her hand to stop him. "No. Now you listen to me." Derek nodded silently. Riley walked to the middle of the room, her eyes red but her voice steady. "You used me." "It wasn't like that." "Yes, it was." She cut him off. "You pretended to be poor. Pretended to struggle with me. All just to test if I was after your money." Derek took a step forward. "I had to be sure." "Sure of what?" Riley shouted. "That I wasn't like the others? That I wasn't looking for your money?" "Yes," Riley let out a bitter laugh. "I didn't even know you had money, Derek. How could I be after something I thought didn't exist?" Derek tried to answer, but couldn't find the words. Riley went on, her voice breaking. "You know what hurts the most? It's not the lie. It's knowing you never trusted me, not even for a second." "I did trust you," Derek insisted. Liar." Riley stomped her foot. "You investigated me, dug through my whole life, and even then you kept lying." Derek lowered his head, ashamed. "I had my reasons." "What reasons?" He took a deep breath. "I've been fooled before. Women pretending to love me, but all they wanted was my money. And when I found out about your family, Anthony, Rebecca, people who were only after money, who lost everything in bad deals, I thought you might be just like them." Riley felt the tears return. "So you judged me based on the family that abandoned me? The family that blackmailed me?" Derek closed his eyes. "I was wrong." "You were." Riley wiped her tears, angry. "And you know what's worse? I started to love you. Truly. Not for what you had, but for who I thought you were." Her words hit Derek like a punch. "Riley?" "But I was falling in love with a lie." She turned and walked up the stairs. Derek followed. "Where are you going?" "Away." Riley went into the bedroom and started throwing clothes into an old suitcase. Derek stood in the doorway, desperate. "Don't go, please. Give me one reason to stay." "Because I love you." Riley stopped, but didn't look at him. "Love can't be built on lies." Derek walked into the room, trying to hold her back. "I know I messed up. I know I was a coward, but everything I felt was real." Riley looked at him, eyes filled with tears. "How can I believe you now?" "Because I'm telling you the truth." Derek held her face in his hands. "For the first time, I'm being completely honest." Riley pulled away, shaking her head. "It's too late." She closed the suitcase and headed for the door. Derek grabbed her arm. "Riley, please." She pulled away, hard. "I'd rather be poor and free than rich and lied to." And she left. Derek stood in the middle of the room, empty, broken. Tyler appeared in the doorway, watching in silence. "Sir, I lost her," Derek whispered, his voice cracked. Tyler sighed. "You can't buy love, sir." Derek looked at him, eyes red. "But you can lose it with one lie." Riley took a cab to the apartment she shared with her mother. It was small, simple, but it was home. When she walked in, she found Grace sitting on the couch, watching TV. She had recently been discharged from the hospital and was recovering well. "Riley?" Grace stood up, worried when she saw the look on her daughter's face. "What happened?" Riley dropped the suitcase on the floor and broke down in her mother's arms. He lied, Mom. He lied about everything. Grace held her tightly, gently stroking her hair. Tell me everything, sweetheart. I'm listening. And Riley told her. She told her about Derek, the lies, the investigation, and how used and betrayed she felt. Grace listened quietly, nodding now and then. When Riley finished, Grace held her daughter's face tenderly. True love requires forgiveness, Riley. But Mom, I know it hurts. I know he made mistakes. Grace wiped the tears from her face. But sometimes people make bad choices out of fear. Riley shook her head, bitter. I can't forgive him, not now. Grace nodded. Then don't forgive him now, but don't close your heart completely. Riley hugged her mother again. I just wish he had trusted me. I know, sweetheart. I know. That night, Riley slept in her old bedroom. It felt strange to be back, like everything she had lived over the past few weeks had been a dream, or a nightmare. The days that followed were hard. Riley tried to get back into her routine, went back to selling cakes, but her heart wasn't in it anymore. Derek tried calling many times. She didn't answer. He sent messages. She didn't reply. He even sent flowers. Riley returned them. I never want to see him again, she told her mother, firm. Grace just nodded, respecting her daughter's pain. But a week later, something changed. Riley started feeling sick. Constant nausea, fatigue, dizziness. Grace insisted she go to the doctor. It's probably just stress, Mom. Go anyway. So Riley went. Reluctantly, but she went. And when the doctor came back with the test results, Riley's world fell apart once again. Miss Cooper, you're pregnant. About 2 months along. Riley froze, trying to process the words. Pregnant. 2 months. Derek. She left the clinic in shock, walking aimlessly through the streets. How was she going to raise a child alone? How was she going to deal with this? And more importantly, how was she going to tell Derek? Or should she tell him at all? Riley leaned against a wall, slid down to the ground, and cried. She cried for the life she'd lost, for the love that had fallen apart, and for the uncertain future she now carried inside her. Riley went back home that day with the test results tucked in her purse like a bomb ready to explode. Grace was in the kitchen making tea when she walked in. So? What did the doctor say? Riley forced a smile. Nothing serious, just stress. Grace looked at her suspiciously, but didn't push. That night, Riley stayed up late, staring at the ceiling, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. Pregnant. She was going to have Derek Barker's child, and he could never know. In the days that followed, Riley tried to get back to her routine. She woke up early, made her jar cakes, and went out to sell them on the streets. Grace watched her with concern but respected her daughter's silence. Are you sure you're okay? She asked one morning. I am, Mom. Riley tied her apron. I just need to keep my mind busy. But keeping her mind busy wasn't easy, especially when the phone wouldn't stop ringing. Derek called every day, sometimes several times a day. Riley never picked up. He sent messages. Riley, please just listen to me. I know I messed up. Give me a chance to make it right. I just want to talk. That's all. Riley deleted them all without reading to the end. On the other side of the city, Derek was falling apart. Sitting in the mansion's living room, he watched old videos on his phone, videos Tyler had recorded without them knowing. Riley laughing while putting up a shelf, Riley burning the coffee and joking about poisoning him, Riley dancing in the kitchen while making cakes. Derek watched them on loop, as if that could bring her back. Tyler walked into the room and shook his head. Sir, this isn't helping. Derek didn't answer, he just kept watching. You need to give her time. Derek finally looked at Tyler, his eyes red. What if she never comes back? Tyler sighed. Then you learn to live with the consequences of your choices. The words were harsh but honest. Meanwhile, Riley tried to keep her spirits up, at least in front of customers. Good morning, Mrs. Linda, she greeted the lady at the bakery. I brought those chocolate ones you love. Are you all right, dear? The woman frowned. You look tired. Riley forced a smile. I'm fine, just working a lot. Be careful not to work yourself into the ground. Riley laughed, but deep down, she knew the woman was right. That night, while they had dinner, Grace finally brought it up. Aren't you going to tell me what's really going on? Riley stopped eating. Mom? I'm not naive, Riley. I know something's wrong. Riley took a deep breath. She wanted to tell her, but the words wouldn't come. Grace reached out and held her hand. Whatever it is, we'll deal with it together. Riley nodded, eyes filling with tears. Thank you, Mom, but she didn't tell her. Not yet. A week later, Riley was selling cakes at a busy intersection. The sun was strong, and she started to feel dizzy. "Ma'am, are you okay?" the driver asked. "I'm just a little." Before she could finish the sentence, everything went dark. Riley fainted right in the middle of the street. When she woke up, she was on a stretcher, being taken into an ambulance. "Stay calm, miss. You fainted. We're taking you to the hospital." Riley tried to protest, but she was too weak. At the hospital, a nurse checked her and found her phone. "I'm going to call someone. Do you have an emergency contact?" Riley wanted to say no, but she was too dizzy to speak. The nurse opened the contact list and saw the first name. "Hot husband," she dialed. Derek was in a meeting when his phone rang. He saw the unknown number and almost didn't answer, but something told him to pick it up. "Hello? Mr. Barker, this is Seattle General Hospital. Your wife was brought in after fainting in the street." Derek's world stopped. "What? Where is she?" "In the ER. Can you come?" Derek didn't even respond. He hung up, grabbed his car keys, and ran out. When he got to the hospital, he was frantic. "Riley Cooper? Where is she?" The receptionist directed him to the room. Derek rushed in and stopped when he saw her lying in the bed, pale, with an IV in her arm. "Riley?" She opened her eyes slowly, and when she saw him, she tried to sit up. "What are you doing here?" "The nurse called me." Derek walked closer. "Are you okay? What happened?" Before she could answer, the doctor came in. "Mr. Barker?" "Yes? Can I speak with you privately?" Riley tried to stop him. "No, he can hear it right here." The doctor hesitated but continued. "Your wife fainted due to low blood pressure and dehydration, but more importantly, she's pregnant, about 2 months along." Derek froze. "Pregnant?" The doctor nodded. "Yes, and she needs to be very careful, no overexertion." The doctor left and the two were alone. Derek looked at Riley, still in shock. "You're pregnant?" Riley looked away, tears starting to fall. "I was going to tell you." "When?" "I don't know," she burst out. "I didn't know how." Derek sat on the edge of the bed and ran his hands over his face. "Is it mine?" Riley stared at him, furious. "Of course it's yours. Who else would it be?" He took a deep breath, trying to process it all. "Sorry, I'm in shock." Riley wiped her tears angrily. "You don't need to worry. I can handle it on my own." "On your own?" Derek looked at her, stunned. "You think I'm going to let you raise my child alone?" "I don't need you, but the baby needs it." Derek held her hand. "And so do you." Riley tried to pull away, but she was weak. "I don't want anything from you." "Riley, please." He knelt beside the bed. "Let me take care of you and the baby." "No." "Come to my house," Derek insisted. "You and your mother. I'll take care of both of you, I promise." Riley shook her head. "I don't want your charity." "It's not charity, it's responsibility." Derek gently squeezed her hand. "Please, do it for the baby." Riley stayed quiet, torn. Grace, who had just arrived at the hospital, came into the room at that moment. "Riley, oh my goodness, what happened?" Riley looked at her mother, then at Derek, and realized that, like it or not, she had to accept, for the baby. A few days later, a black car pulled up in front of a huge mansion. Riley stepped out, holding her mother's hand, staring at the impressive building. Well-kept gardens, large windows, iron gates, everything screamed luxury. Derek came out of the house to greet them. "Welcome." Grace looked around, amazed. "This is enormous." Riley just stood there quietly. Derek led them inside. The house was even more impressive on the inside. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, expensive paintings. Riley felt completely out of place. "Your rooms are upstairs." Derek pointed to the staircase. "You can choose whichever one you like." Grace thanked him, but Riley stayed silent. After her mother went up, Riley stood still in the hallway, looking around. Derek walked up slowly. "Are you all right?" Riley murmured, barely audible, "I don't belong in this world." Derek felt a tightness in his chest. "You belong wherever you want to belong." Riley looked at him, her eyes tired. "I'm here for the baby, that's all." Derek nodded, accepting it. "I know." And in that moment, they both understood this was just the beginning of something complicated, painful, and uncertain. But for the baby, they were both willing to try. The first days in the mansion felt strange. Riley woke up in a bedroom bigger than the entire apartment she used to share with her mother. Everything was luxurious, quiet, too perfect, and she felt completely out of place. Grace, on the other hand, was delighted. "Riley, look at this kitchen," she called out the first morning. "There are 3 refrigerators." 3. Riley came down the stairs, still half asleep. "No one needs 3 refrigerators, Mom." "But it's nice to have them." Grace opened one, amazed. "Look at all this space." Riley couldn't help but smile. At least her mom was happy. Derek came into the kitchen at that moment, already dressed for the day. "Good morning." Grace greeted him cheerfully, but Riley just nodded. "I'm heading out, but I made coffee." Derek pointed to the coffee maker. "And there's some cut fruit in the fridge." Riley raised an eyebrow. "You cut fruit?" "Yes." He looked almost proud. "I read that pregnant women need to eat well." Grace smiled broadly, but Riley just rolled her eyes. "Thanks." Derek left, and Grace turned to her daughter. "He's trying, Riley." "I know," Riley sighed, "but trying doesn't erase what he did." Grace didn't respond, but her look said everything. In the following days, Derek really tried. Hard. He made breakfast every morning, left notes on the fridge with reminders about prenatal vitamins, even bought pregnancy books and marked important pages. Riley tried to ignore it, but it was hard. One night, while lying in bed reading, she heard a soft voice in the hallway. She slowly opened the door and saw Derek kneeling beside her bedroom door, speaking quietly. "Hi, little one," or little girl. "We don't know yet." He laughed softly. "Your dad here is kind of lost, but I promise I'll learn. I'll be the best father I can be." Riley felt a tightness in her chest. Was he talking to the baby? Derek went on. "Your mom is amazing, you know? Strong, funny, stubborn. You're going to love her. And me. I'm going to do everything I can to deserve both of you." Riley closed the door gently, tears silently running down her face. The next day, Riley found Derek in the living room, surrounded by baby clothes. Tiny onesies, little shoes, blankets. "What is all this?" she asked, surprised. Derek looked up, a little embarrassed. "I stopped by the store and couldn't resist." Riley picked up a yellow onesie with a little duck embroidered on it. "You bought all this?" "Too much?" He scratched his neck. "That's what I thought when I got home." Riley laughed, her first real laugh in weeks. "That's a lot of clothes for just one baby." Derek smiled, relieved to see her laugh. "Then the baby will have options." Grace, watching from the kitchen, mumbled to herself, "He loves you, girl. He just didn't know how to show it." Later that week, Riley decided to bake again. Not to sell, just to stay busy. Derek walked into the kitchen curious. "Can I help?" Riley hesitated but eventually said yes. "All right, but follow my instructions." Derek nodded, as serious as if he were in a business meeting. Riley couldn't hold back her laughter. "Relax, it's just cake, not surgery." She taught him how to measure the ingredients, mix the batter, grease the pans. Derek followed every step with intense concentration, but when it came time to pour the batter into the pan, he missed, and half of it landed in the sink. Riley burst out laughing. "You're a sweet disaster." Derek looked at the mess and laughed too. "But I'm your disaster." The words hung in the air. Riley stopped laughing and looked at him. Derek looked away, embarrassed. "Sorry, it just slipped out." Riley didn't say anything. She just went back to mixing the batter, but her heart was racing. That night, Derek couldn't sleep. He stayed in the living room, staring out the window, thinking. He went upstairs to Riley's room and stopped at the door. She was sound asleep, her face relaxed, one hand resting on her belly. He stepped inside quietly and just stood there, watching her. "I'm scared of losing you again," he whispered softly, more to himself than to her. But Riley didn't hear. She kept sleeping peacefully. Derek left the room and went back to his own, heart heavy. The next day, Riley was sitting on the porch, talking with Grace. "Mom, I don't know what to do." Grace held her daughter's hand. "Is it about Derek?" Riley nodded. "I still love him." The words were hard, painful, but I don't know if I can forgive him. Grace squeezed her hand. "Love doesn't erase the hurt, honey, but forgiveness can heal. What if he hurts me again? What if he doesn't?" Grace replied. "Are you going to live in fear forever?" Riley had no answer. From the hallway, Derek heard everything. He was coming back from the kitchen when he stopped at the sound of Riley's voice. He leaned against the wall, heart pounding. She still loved him, but didn't know if she could forgive. His eyes filled with tears, not from sadness but from determination. He had to prove himself. He had to show he was worthy of that love. That night, Riley was reading in her room when the door opened. Derek walked in, serious, determined. "Riley, I need to talk to you." She closed the book, wary. "About what?" "About us." He walked to the center of the room. "It's time I told you everything." Riley sat on the bed, heart racing. "Derek?" He knelt down in front of her, holding her hands firmly. "I love you." Riley tried to look away, but he didn't let her. "Please, just listen." She nodded, tears already starting to fall. "I was wrong. I lied. I doubted you. I investigated you. I was a coward. Derek took a deep breath, but everything I felt was real. Every laugh, every conversation, every moment. Real. Riley sobbed softly. I love you, he repeated. And I want to be the father of this baby. I want to be by your side. I want to build a life with you. He squeezed her hands. If you give me a chance, I promise to be the man you deserve. I promise never to lie again. I promise to fight for us every day. Riley was crying openly now, torn between love and pain. Derek rested his forehead against her hand. Please, Riley, give me a chance. The room fell silent. Only Riley's quiet sobs could be heard. She wanted to scream yes. She wanted to forgive him. She wanted to believe. But the fear was still there. Derek waited, heart in his hands, not knowing if he'd be accepted or rejected. And Riley, looking at the man kneeling in front of her, realized she was facing the hardest choice of her life. Forgive or move on alone? She closed her eyes, tears falling, and whispered, I need time. Derek nodded, accepting it. I'll wait, as long as you need. He kissed her hand gently and left the room. Riley stayed there, alone, hugging her knees, crying, because deep down, she already knew the answer. She just needed the courage to accept it. The next morning, Riley woke up with her eyes swollen from crying. She went down to the kitchen and found Derek already making breakfast. He looked at her, hesitant. Good morning. Good morning. Riley sat at the table, avoiding his gaze. Derek placed a plate of toast and fruit in front of her. You need to eat, for the baby. Riley nodded and began eating in silence. The air was heavy, but not hostile. After a few minutes, Derek sat down across from her. Can I tell you something? Riley looked up. About what? Why I lied. He took a deep breath. The whole truth. Riley set down her fork, giving him her full attention. Derek started slowly. The arrest wasn't fair. I was accused of corporate fraud by a partner who wanted me out of the way. They planted evidence, manipulated documents. I spent 6 months in jail before they proved I was innocent. Riley felt her chest tighten. When I got out, my family disowned me. They said I had stained the Barker name. He let out a bitter laugh. They didn't even wait to find out if I was guilty or not. Derek, I was left alone, he went on, his voice cracking. And every woman who came near me after that only wanted 2 things, money or status. No one wanted me for real. Tears began to fall from his eyes. And then you showed up. Derek looked at Riley. You, who didn't know who I was. Who didn't know about the money. And I got scared. Scared that once you found out, you'd become like the others. Riley felt her own tears fall. I would never be like that. I know. Derek took her hand. I know that now. But back then, the fear was stronger than reason. He stood up, walked over to her, and knelt again. You were my rescue when all I could see was darkness. Derek rested his forehead on her hand. You made me believe there's still goodness in the world. Riley pulled him into a hug, crying. I understand fear, but you hurt me. I know. He held her tight. And I'll spend the rest of my life making it right. Riley gently pulled back, wiping her tears. I need time, Derek. I need to trust again. He nodded. However long you need. In the days that followed, Derek kept his word. He went with Riley to every medical appointment, sat beside her, held her hand, asked the doctor questions. When they heard the baby's heartbeat for the first time, Derek cried. It's so fast, he murmured, amazed. Riley smiled, touched by his emotion. At home, Derek made healthy meals, always with fruits, vegetables, and protein. He left sweet notes around the house. Don't forget your vitamin D. There's fresh orange juice in the fridge. D. You're amazing. Riley kept them all. One afternoon, Grace found Riley reading the notes in bed. He's really trying, isn't he? Riley smiled, a little nostalgic. He is. And you? Grace sat beside her. Are you ready to forgive? Riley sighed. I'm almost there, Mom. Almost. That night, Riley was lying in bed when she heard a voice coming from the hallway. Derek was singing. She opened the door quietly and saw him sitting on the floor, leaning against the wall, singing softly. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Riley couldn't hold back a laugh. Derek stopped, surprised to see her. You heard that? I did. Riley came closer. You're a terrible singer. He laughed, a little embarrassed. I know, but I read that babies like to hear their parents' voices. Riley sat down beside him. He'll like it, even with your awful singing. Derek smiled and, without thinking, took her hand. They sat there in the hallway, in comfortable silence, and in that moment, Riley realized love was beginning to grow again. A few days later, on a rainy afternoon, Riley and Derek were in the living room. She was trying to assemble a crib mobile, but the pieces didn't fit. This is impossible, she muttered. Derek came over and picked up the manual. Let me try. You? Riley raised an eyebrow. The same man who put the bookshelf together upside down? Derek pretended to be offended. That was one time. Riley laughed and he took the chance to steal a quick kiss. She froze, surprised. Derek stepped back, embarrassed. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Riley was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she smiled. It's okay. Derek's eyes widened. Really? Really? Riley rested her head on his shoulder. Maybe forgiveness isn't the end of our story. Maybe it's the beginning. Derek's heart raced. He turned to her, gently cupping her face. Are you sure? Riley nodded, eyes filled with tears. I am, but promise me one thing. Anything. Don't ever doubt me again. Derek touched his forehead to hers. Never again. I promise. And he kissed her. Slowly, tenderly, like it was the first time. When they pulled away, they were both smiling. I love you, Derek said. I love you too, Riley replied, finally free from the weight she'd carried. But peace didn't last long. The next day, the doorbell rang. Derek went to answer, and Riley heard familiar voices at the door. She came down the stairs slowly and froze when she saw who it was. Anthony, Rebecca, Scarlett? Dad? Anthony turned and smiled. Riley, it's so good to see you, sweetheart. Rebecca stepped forward with a fake smile. We heard you're pregnant. We came to visit. Scarlett rolled her eyes but stayed quiet. Riley looked at them, stunned. How did you find out where I was? It wasn't hard to figure out. Rebecca looked around the mansion. This place, very impressive. Derek stepped behind Riley, placing a protective hand on her back. Can I help you with something? Anthony held out his hand. Derek Barker. Pleasure to meet you. I'm Riley's father. Derek shook his hand, but his eyes were cold. I know who you are. Rebecca glanced around with barely disguised envy. So it's true, you've got everything back. The fortune, the company. Derek didn't answer. He just watched them. Riley noticed the look in their eyes. It wasn't concern. It was greed. Why are you here? She asked directly. Anthony tried to look sincere. We're family, Riley. We just wanted to make sure you're okay. Riley let out a bitter laugh. Family? Since when? Scarlett scoffed. See, Mom? I told you it was a waste of time. Rebecca gave her daughter a warning look. Derek, who had been quietly watching everything, finally spoke. Interesting how people show up again once the money starts shining. The silence that followed was sharp. Anthony tried to object. Derek, it's not like that. Derek cut him off, his voice cold and steady. And just so you know, I was never actually broke. Riley looked at him, surprised. Rebecca blinked, confused. What do you mean? The news about my bankruptcy was fake, a strategy to keep gold diggers away. Derek crossed his arms, and it worked perfectly. Anthony and Rebecca exchanged embarrassed glances. Riley felt a wave of pride. Derek was standing up for her. So, Rebecca tried to recover. You lied to everyone? I did, Derek confirmed. And I found out exactly who was worth my time. He looked straight at Riley, and she knew he was talking about her. Derek took a step forward, his eyes locked on Anthony. I know exactly why you're here, and it has nothing to do with family concern. Rebecca tried to stay composed. Derek, you're being unfair. Unfair? Derek gave a dry laugh. I know about the blackmail. Anthony turned pale. What blackmail? The one you pulled on Riley. Derek crossed his arms again. Forcing her to marry me instead of Scarlett in exchange for paying her mother's treatment. Riley turned to him stunned. He knew? Rebecca tried to dodge it. That was a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Riley finally found her voice. You blackmailed me and nearly ruined my relationship. Anthony stepped forward, reaching for her arm. Riley, sweetheart, we just wanted what was best for you. Riley pulled away from him. The best? You used me like a bargaining chip. Scarlett scoffed from the corner. Oh, stop being dramatic. You ended up just fine, didn't you? Riley turned to her, furious. Just fine. You have no idea what I went through. The fear I felt. Derek placed a protective hand on Riley's shoulder. I think it's best if you leave. Rebecca tried once more. Derek, be reasonable. We're family. Family doesn't blackmail a sick daughter. Derek walked to the door and opened it. My home is not a shelter for parasites. His words hit like a bomb. Anthony tried to argue, but Riley stepped in. Oh, Rebecca? Riley smiled. But it was a bitter smile. Thank you for making me marry an ex-rich man, as you called him that day. Rebecca frowned, confused. Riley continued, her voice steady. Because now I've found the love of my life, and I'm truly happy. Not because of his money, but because of his character and heart. She looked at Scarlett. Oh, and Scarlett? I'm not jealous or disappointed, little sister. Scarlett clenched her fists in fury. Anthony and Rebecca left in silence, humiliated. Scarlett followed, but not before mumbling loud enough for everyone to hear. If I had known Derek was still a millionaire, I would have married him myself, not that clumsy Riley. Derek slammed the doors shut. Riley stood still, breathing deeply, trying to calm her racing heart. Derek pulled her into a hug. "You were amazing." Riley laughed, nervous. "I was shaking inside. You didn't show it." He kissed her forehead. "I'm proud of you." Grace, who had been watching from the kitchen, walked in with a big smile. "Well done. They had it coming." Riley hugged her mother, relieved. "It's over, Mom. Finally over." A few days later, Derek had a surprise planned. When Riley came downstairs for dinner, she found the living room decorated with candles, simple flowers, and a carefully set table. "What's all this?" Derek stepped in, a little nervous, adjusting his tie. "A dinner, just for us." Riley smiled, touched. "You did all this yourself?" "Tyler helped," Derek admitted. "He saved me from burning the food." Riley laughed and sat down at the table. The dinner was simple but delicious. They talked, they laughed, and for the first time in a long while, everything felt just right. After the meal, Derek stood up and held out his hand. "Come with me." Riley followed him out to the balcony. The city lights sparkled in the distance, beautiful and quiet. Derek took a deep breath and turned to her. "Riley Cooper, or should I say Riley Barker?" She raised an eyebrow. "Still Cooper, for now." Derek smiled. Then suddenly, he dropped to one knee. Riley's eyes widened. "Derek?" He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a simple, beautiful ring. "I know we're already married." Derek began, a little nervous. "But that wedding was out of obligation, out of desperation. It wasn't what you deserved." Tears welled up in Riley's eyes. "So I'm asking again." He held her hand. "Will you marry me? For real this time?" "For love?" Riley laughed through her tears. "You're ridiculous." "Is that a yes?" "It's a yes." She pulled him to his feet and kissed him. Derek slid the ring onto her finger, and they stood there wrapped in each other's arms, looking out at the city. 3 months later, the wedding day arrived. Riley was in the room, getting ready, wearing a simple yet elegant white dress. Grace was adjusting her veil, emotional. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." Riley smiled, nervous. "Thank you, Mom." There was a knock at the door. Grace went to answer it and came back surprised. "Riley, it's your father." Riley froze. "What?" Anthony walked in slowly, his eyes red. "Can I talk to you?" Grace stepped out, leaving the two of them alone. Anthony stood there, awkward. "I came to ask for forgiveness." Riley crossed her arms, suspicious. "Forgiveness?" "For what I did," he said. "Spin closer," his voice breaking. "For the blackmail, for abandoning you, for everything. I was a terrible father." Riley felt the tears returning. "You really were." "I regret it," Anthony cried. "Everything I did to you and your mother. Grace didn't deserve it." "You didn't deserve it." Riley wiped her tears. "Why now?" "Because I realized I've lost the best part of my life," he said, taking her hand. "My daughter." Riley stayed quiet for a long moment. "I forgive you, Dad." Anthony sobbed with relief. "Thank you." Riley gave him a brief hug, then stepped back. "But I'd rather keep some distance, for now." Anthony nodded, understanding. "I respect that." He left, and Riley took a deep breath. The ceremony was simple, but emotional. Friends, acquaintances, and Grace in the front row, crying tears of joy. Tyler stood beside Derek as best man. When Riley walked in, Derek smiled wide. "Wow," he whispered. Tyler leaned in. "Don't mess this up, boss." Derek laughed. During the ceremony, Tyler gave a funny speech. "When I met Derek, he was a workaholic with no life. Now he sings kids' songs in the hallway. Riley, you've worked miracles." Everyone laughed. Grace handed over the rings, overcome with emotion. When the priest declared them husband and wife, Riley looked at Derek and said, "I never imagined the stranger at the altar would become the love of my life." Derek kissed her and replied, "And I never thought my salvation would smell like cake in a jar." Riley laughed, and they kissed again, surrounded by applause and laughter. As they walked out of the church hand in hand, Riley looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you." Derek pulled her close. "For what?" "For you," she smiled. "For our baby. For everything." Derek kissed her forehead. "Thank you for giving me a chance." And there, under the blue sky and the shining sun, Riley and Derek finally began their real story. A story that started under the worst circumstances, but bloomed where no one thought it could. Because true love doesn't need to be perfect. What did you think of Riley and Derek's story? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any of our stories. And don't forget to check out more emotional stories by clicking right here on the end screen.